Good evening, everyone, and welcome to week 11 of 12 of Go Healthy. Yes, next week will be our last class. As you can see, if you are submitting the trackers, your 11th tracker is due today. And then, of course, next week, if you are turning in the trackers, will be your last tracker. So we're going to go ahead and get started as usual. I do have everyone's mic on mute, so you can always unmute your mic for questions or comments. And of course, I do have the chat feature available as well. All right, so what we're going to do today, like we do every week, we'll start off discussing the success that you had from last week's action step. We will then discuss what we're calling health management. We will then assign the week's action steps, introduce next week's topic, and next week's last Go Healthy tracker, and then we'll finish up with any questions that you may have. All right, so hello, Ted. Give you a thumbs up. Okay, if you do remember last week, we talked about emotional eating, okay? And we said, based on the video from the dietitian, was to recognize if you were experiencing or if you are experiencing emotional hunger, and then replace that emotional hunger with kind of two options. The first option, if you do decide to eat something, make sure you're choosing something that's a healthy food option. Or the second option is the non food option. So that's non food distractions or activities. And, we talked about, and the dietitian talked about creating yourself of non food distractions or activities. All right. So, saying that, if you would like to chime in, what is one non food distraction or activity that you can use to replace emotional eating? So, what is one non food distraction or activity that you can use to replace emotional eating? You can send it in your chat or unmute your mic. Okay. Ted said reading. Yep. Crystal said exercise. Mm-hmm. So, one non food distraction or activity that you can use to replace emotional eating. Anyone else want to chime in on that?
Read a book.
Yeah. Yeah. Read a book. So far we've got two ones for reading. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Crystal said as far as exercise, go for a walk. Plus, with that exercise, you're releasing those feel good endorphins. Right? Anyone else? Okay. All right. So, moving forward, yeah, we all experience emotional eating. It can be, remember, negative emotions, it can be positive emotions. So, the key, if you do want to eat something to soothe those emotions, make sure it's a healthier option, okay? But if you don't want that calorie option, create or have your own list of those non-food distractions or activities. Okay, so that's going to take us to our topic of the day, which is health management. If you go all the way back to our introduction class, we talked about three goals of the class. One was weight management. The second was health management. Okay. And then the third was the gift cards. So, anyway, and we'll talk about that next week when we wrap it up as well. So, it's very important to talk about the goal of health management. Now, what we're going to do with the following slides, we're going to define what chronic diseases are, and all of the information that you're going to see on this PowerPoint slide comes from the Center of Disease Control and Prevention. Okay, so we will define what chronic diseases are. We're also going to discuss the 4 key modifiable risk factors influencing chronic diseases. We will then list the 8 healthy lifestyle behaviors for chronic disease and or prevention. Again, all of this coming from the CDC. Now, let's first define what chronic diseases are. Now, as we go along through the PowerPoint, if you have questions, definitely shoot me a chat or you can unmute your mic. So, chronic diseases, as defined by the CDC, it says it's defined broadly as conditions that last 1 year or more and require ongoing medical attention or limit activities of daily living or both. Now, your chronic diseases here. You can see from your PowerPoint, I think it's like 7 chronic diseases, and that would be heart disease, cancer, chronic lung disease, stroke, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, and chronic kidney disease. And from this, these chronic diseases are largely influenced by this short list or a short list of risk behaviors that can be modified. And that's what we're going to look at the or with the following slides. So again, chronic diseases, conditions that last 1 year or more and require ongoing medical attention or limited activities of daily living or both. And you see from the PowerPoint here, the 7 chronic diseases, which are largely influenced by a short list of modifiable risk behaviors. So let's look at these or this short list of modifiable risk behaviors. All right. Again, this does come from the CDC. So let's first introduce the 4 key modifiable risk behaviors that influence your chronic diseases. The first one is tobacco use and exposure to secondhand smoke. And then the following slide, we're specifically going to look at a little information on this. Now, the second key modifiable risk behavior that influences chronic diseases is poor nutrition. We're going to look at a slide specifically with some information with that. And then the third key modifiable risk behavior influencing chronic diseases is lack of physical activity. We're going to look at a PowerPoint slide with that. And then the last key modifiable risk behavior that can influence chronic diseases is excessive alcohol use. All right, so let's look at the first key modifiable risk behavior, and that's tobacco use and exposure to secondhand smoke. Okay, now this can cause cancer, it can cause heart disease, stroke, lung disease, type 2 diabetes, and other chronic health conditions. Now, just some fast facts here on your PowerPoint from the CDC. I'm not going to read all 4 or 5 of those, but just those that I kind of highlighted. It says tobacco use is the leading cause of preventable, that's a key word, preventable disease, disability, and death in the United States. The other highlighted portion here says cigarette smoking causes more than 480,000 deaths annually, including 41,000 deaths from secondhand smoke. For every American who dies because of smoking, at least 30 are living with a serious smoking related illness. So, again, one key modifiable risk behavior that we can change is modifiable is tobacco use and exposure to secondhand smoke. Okay. Now let's look at the second key modifiable risk behavior, which is poor nutrition, which has been really the basis of our entire, Go Healthy program. And this includes our What is considered a poor nutrition includes a diet that is low in fruits, low in vegetables, and I think that rings a bell. Remember, we have the goal of eat your way to five a day of fruits and vegetables. Also, a poor diet is one that's high in sodium, high in that harmful saturated fat, and high in added sugars. Okay. Now, poor nutrition can cause heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and some forms of cancer. Now, according to the CDC, just some fast facts. Out of the five, I've just kind of highlighted three of these. It says fewer than 1 in 10 US adults and adolescents eat enough fruits and veggies. 6 in 10 young people and 5 in 10 adults consume a sugary drink on a given day. And lastly, US diets are high in added sugars, sodium, and saturated fats. So, the second key modifiable risk behavior is poor nutrition. All right. Now, the third key modifiable risk behavior for chronic diseases is lack of physical activity. And again, I think that rings a bell. That is one of our fundamentals is physical activity. Remember, 30 to 60 minutes a day. And keep in mind, anything that gets you moving can count toward that goal of physical activity. So let's look at lack of physical activity. And it says low levels of physical activity can contribute to heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and some forms of cancer and obesity. Now, some fast facts from the CDC. They have five here. Just point out two of these. It says only 1 in 4 US adults, so what's that, 25%, and 1 in 5 high school students, what's that, 20%? My math is great, meet the recommended physical activity guidelines. And it says about 31 million adults age 50 or older are inactive, meaning that they get no physical activity beyond that of just daily living. Okay. So, key modifiable risk behavior is lack of physical activity. And lastly, the fourth key modifiable risk behavior that can influence chronic diseases is excessive alcohol use. And it can cause heart disease, stroke, liver disease, some forms of cancer, and other harmful health conditions. Now, some fast facts from the CDC. It has five of these listed. Just one that I point out here. It says excessive alcohol use is responsible for 95,000 deaths in the US each year, including 1 in 10 total deaths among working age adults. So, again, a key modifiable risk behavior is excessive alcohol use. All right. So, before we get to looking at, I think, the 8 healthy lifestyle behaviors for chronic disease prevention and management, does anybody have any comments or questions on those 4 key modifiable risk behaviors that we went over? Okay. And if you do, you don't unmute your mic or you can drop it in the chat. So let's look at the 8 healthy lifestyle behaviors for chronic disease prevention and or management. Again, this does come from the CDC. The first one is do not smoke, avoid secondhand smoke. So do not smoke, avoid secondhand smoke. The second one is to eat a healthy diet. The third is to get regular physical activity. And of course, that relates to our Go Healthy fundamentals. When it relates to a healthy diet, one thing that you can always keep in mind to make sure you're choosing, the right things within all the food groups, use those My Plate tips that we talked about. Remember, with your fruits, the goal was to focus on whole fruits. The My Plate tip for vegetables was to bury your vegetables. The My Plate tip for grains was to make half your grains whole grains. The My Plate tip for dairy was to move to low fat to fat free. And then the My Plate tip for protein was to vary your protein routine. Okay. Also throw it in there, go lean with protein. Okay. And then when you look at the fourth healthy lifestyle behavior for chronic disease prevention and or management is to avoid or limit alcohol consumption. The fifth is to manage stress effectively. Manage stress effectively, very important. The sixth is to get adequate sleep. And according to research, they recommend adults get anywhere from 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Okay, so get adequate sleep. The seventh is to get your screenings, and that can be your annual wellness visits, your age and just gender specific screening. So those kind of preventative measures are extremely important to get. And then lastly is to know your family health history. Okay. So again, these are the 8 healthy lifestyle behaviors for chronic disease prevention and or management listed by the CDC. Any comments or questions related to that? Okay. All right. Which now takes us to your week's action steps. You may get a little bit of time back into your day. And those action steps is to engage in all healthy lifestyle behaviors for prevention and the management of chronic diseases. Also to still, still work on your fundamentals. Remember, that's your fruits, using the guide to smart food choices, your fruits and your vegetables, your water intake, when it relates to your proteins, grains, and dairy, use those My Plate tips for guidance. And then the physical activity. Anything that gets you moving can count. Okay. So that is your action steps for the week, which takes us to next week's topic, which is what we're calling determining the next step. Okay. And then tomorrow I will email everyone the optional tracker, which will be your last tracker that you would actually submit. So any questions or comments before we go for the day? We definitely wanted to make sure we hit on the health management aspect because that's an extremely important goal for all of us. Any questions, any comments? All right. Well, as usual, I did record this. So once I do get this converted over to a YouTube video, I will send this out to everyone. And then, like I said, next Monday will be our final class for the program. Okay. Well, if you do need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to me over email. Other than that, I hope you all have a great rest of your night and a great week ahead. Okay. Thank y'all very much. Bye.